In 1830, the Belgians rebelled and achieved their independence from the Netherlands. After very few military confrontations, the Belgians had, however, without making peace with the Dutch, created a constitution and invited Leopold of Saxe-Coburg to be their new king in July 1831. But the Dutch still occupied forts in Antwerp and Maastricht. Plus, because Luxembourg was still part of the German Confederation, the Prussians helped occupy the fort there. Leopold also had a very weak army, with only 20,000 ill-equipped troops, most of which were members of the recently created Civic Guard. So the Dutch LED by William I hoped to restore their national prestige and reclaim the old provinces, so a large force headed by his son, Prince William, amassed along the new border, and on August 2nd, just a few days after Leopold's coronation, 50,000 Dutch soldiers entered Belgium. The better trained and more numerous Dutch troops easily overwhelmed the Belgians at every encounter. On the first day, they won at Revels. On the second day, they captured Turnhout, and on the third, they retook Antwerp. Over the next couple days, the Dutch continued to move south, capturing towns like Diest, while meeting very little opposition and experiencing few casualties. On August 8th, they won a major victory at Hasselt, nearly crippling the Belgian army and putting Brussels in danger. So Leopold of Belgium dispatched diplomats abroad to try and get help. The British had initially been opposed to Belgian independence, as they believed the French would annex it, so they refused to help the French, however, responded immediately and sent an army into Belgium. The Dutch, on the other hand, were left alone as the Prussians and Russians refused to send troops due to rebellions at home, or because they feared creating a much larger conflict. So despite winning another major battle at Louvain on the 12th, the Dutch retreated as the French moved into Belgium and signed a ceasefire. However, the Dutch refused to withdraw from Antwerp citadel, as William hoped to hold on to the cities, as the great powers met in London to discuss peace. And at this Conference of London, the great powers agreed to recognize Belgian independence, but ceded Limburg and Luxembourg to the Dutch. However, William didn't accept this, and neither did many Dutch speakers in northern Belgium, the people who wanted to remain Dutch. The Orangists carried out acts of violence during the negotiations, so in turn, the Belgians began to censor their publications. Then, in late 1832, the Dutch bombarded Antwerp from the citadel, setting fire to large sections of the city. The French retaliated to this act of aggression by laying siege to the Dutch garrison in the citadel in November, and by using mortar fire, forced them to surrender in a month. However, William still refused to recognize Belgian independence for the next few years, and it was only in 1839 that he did so. In the final agreement, Belgium was given large chunks of Luxembourg. This was the third partition of Luxembourg, leaving it just half the size, as it was in the beginning of the 19th century. Luxembourg did, however, remain in a personal union with the Dutch. However, because it was part of the German Confederation, the Prussians wanted some form of compensation, so the Duchy of Limburg was created and joined the German Confederation. While remaining under the Dutch crown, William I abdicated his throne shortly after accepting Belgian independence, and his son William II would go on to introduce a lot of liberal reforms, weakening the power of the monarchy there. In Belgium, meanwhile, the new political system was dominated by the Catholic and liberal parties. However, very few people were, in fact, eligible to vote Leopold I and his successor. Leopold II, however, did help turn Belgium into a minor power by quickly industrializing and seeking out colonies around the world, and the British guaranteed the new nation's neutrality in any future war, and this treaty would be crucial in the future, as it brought Britain into World War I. After the Germans marched through Belgium,